It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
This episode of The Price of Football is supported by International Sports Convention 2025, which is taking place on March the 19th and 20th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. More than 1,000 delegates and 100 speakers will be attending the event, and they will be covering a huge range of topics, from sponsorship and fan engagement to governance and integrity. Founded in 2009, International Sports Convention is the meeting place for the business of sport and has been for the last 16 years.
And there's a special treat for those lucky enough to attend the 2025 edition. The two of us will also be appearing. We'll be having a chat about football finance and governance in front of a live audience. You can book your place now at a special early offer price by going to internationalsportsconvention.com. But don't delay, that special early offer price is only available until the 20th of February.
Book your place now for International Sports Convention 2025 at Spurs Stadium on the 19th and 20th of March by going to internationalsportsconvention.com, and hopefully we'll see you there.
What is... Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Nice to see you back at home in leafy Sussex, Kieran. It's very nice, rather than the slightly Spartan bachelor pad that you were in last week.
Yes. It's been a good weekend. It was, in case Mark Cucurella forgot who he was, I spent 90 minutes on Saturday night reminding him.
Did you?
Did indeed. Most uncharted accountant like, I'll put it like that.
I spent 25 minutes on Saturday night going, that's handball. As you know, I can't stand VAR. I hate VAR, but just for that moment, I was it was bad enough on Friday night when you go, he's 11 yards offside, Maguire. Not only is he offside, there's 6 of them offside as well. Because clearly the dozy linesman has gone, well, VAR, sort that out, wouldn't it? Oh, shit. We've got slight issues with the timescale this week, Kieran, which is why I was about to keep people abreast of the progress of my cold. But I'm realising that the cold came on during the interview that we did with Paul Barber about the independent regulator, and that interview hasn't gone out yet. So me moaning about my cold after that interview is making no sense to people. Suffice to say, I've got a cold, everybody, but I've properly dragged myself out of what Ali would not refer to as my sick bed. I've made pathetic hand gestures suggesting that I'd like a Lemsip delivered to the podcast table. And those pathetic hand gestures have been met with a rather more forceful hand gesture of Ali's own. It's questions day, Kieran, and it's been Super Bowl weekend with a slightly surprising result. Always good to see the Eagles of any sort winning any sort of trophy. Take it where you can get it. But Dom Rand says, good question. Dom Rand says, as it is Super Bowl weekend, can you explain how the NFL stacks up against the Premier League financially?
Yes, certainly, Dom. This was great fun for me to do this one. As far as revenues are concerned, the NFL generates revenues from the same three main sources as we see in the Premier League. What it doesn't have is transfer fees when it comes to players, but um, the TV deal is spectacularly successful. You've got Fox, CBS, and one of the other channels, all of whom are desperate because when you take a look at the 100 most viewed TV shows in the United States in 2024, 99 of them involve sports events. And of that 99, I think over 60 involved NFL matches. So it is the product to have. Each team receives around about $400 million in TV rights. Now, to put that in some form of context, the Premier League handbook, no, the Premier League annual report was published last Friday, and the money distributed by the Premier League varied from, I think it was £109 million for Sheffield United, finishing bottom, and Manchester City got around about 170 for winning the Premier League. So even if once you convert dollars into sterling, the side that came bottom of the NFL received around about 2.5 times that of Sheffield United. So it is very successful. Commercial deals are spectacularly successful. Match day income is far higher because there's a cultural difference between, I think, American sports franchise fans and football fans here. And also, as I said, there's fewer matches. You're only watching normally 9 home matches plus the playoffs in the NFL, so they're willing to pay more match, and the stadia are far bigger. So the revenue is much higher, and that's a testament to the fact that ultimately NFL is a TV product which involves sport, as opposed to the Premier League, which is a sporting product which is now being broadcast on TV. If you take a look at costs, the wage cap in the NFL, and I think this will surprise people, $224 million. Now that's not that high. Manchester City's is what, £400 million. So the wage bills are lower, but as far as my understanding is concerned, you only get paid for 5 months of the year. So it's a strange one. And then you've got endorsements, which are incredibly lucrative as far as American sports are concerned. So you put those two factors together, and we reach the idea of profit and loss. Now, under American corporate legislation, you only have to publish your financials if you are a listed company. And most of these are private companies. I think only the Packers are a listed company. But from my calculations, the NFL clubs are all incredibly profitable. And that's why part of the reason why the owners are in them. You contrast that with the Premier League, and we always talk about the success of the Premier League, but then we go to Kieran's glib saying, number 72, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Well, Premier League clubs are superb when it comes to generating revenue. They're rubbish at cost control, and therefore that's why so many of them are losing money. So to sum up, Dom, more money coming in from TV, more money overall coming in from commercial because they want to tie up with them. But the wage bills are very much under control in the NFL, which means it's a far more profitable product than English football.
It'd be interesting to look, Kieran, at the economics of those massive car park parties they have before NFL games, where, according to my American brother-in-law, the aim is to get shit-faced as quickly as possible. It's one of his favourite English expressions, because, of course, we can't say pissed because he thinks I mean angry.
Yes.
Because he must think he's angry a lot of the time. No, he's pissed a lot of the time. So, but basically, you can get upwards of 30 or 40,000 people in those. What do they call them? Trailer. There's a special name for them that passes me by because it's a strange language. But I'll look into that. By which I mean I'll ask Clint, my brother-in-law. You've got
what a name that is for an American.
For a Clint, it's great. It's great having a brother-in-law called Clint.
Yes.
It's really. Although sometimes when it's written in block capitals and the L and the I are too close together, can confuse. Our next question comes from Eamon Schaffer. And Eamon says, can you outline the primary drivers of football club valuations and explain whether any of those drivers are being overvalued by investors or owners? It seems on the face of it a very basic question, Kieran, but the more I think about this question, the more I think it's an interesting one.
It is an interesting one. There are a variety of valuation methods that we use when trying to price a football club. You've got sort of the grown-up measures. So here we use something called comparative multiples. What you do is you say, if Manchester United was recently sold and it worked out as £7 paid by offshore Jim for every £1 of revenue, then why can't we value Chelsea or Manchester City or Liverpool when doing a price for that? And certainly that is something which is taken into consideration. So that's one method. The next method is something called a discounted cash flow method. What you try to do is to work out how much cash the club is going to generate over the course of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it's going to be. Doesn't really work in football for two reasons. First of all, many clubs don't generate any cash, which is an indictment of the industry. Secondly, one of the issues that was raised when we had the discussion on the podcast goes out with Paul Barber and Claire Sumner was that of uncertainty. Well, I don't know where Brighton are going to be spending the next 15 to 20 years. You don't know where Palace are going to be spending the next 15 to 20 years. In an ideal world, it will all be in the Premier League, but we've got to be honest to say that there's probably far less than a 50-50 chance of that being the case. So the model where you try to work out your cash being generated, if you are Apple, if you are Mercedes-Benz, if you are Marks and Spencers, you're saying, well, unless it's a catastrophe, we know we're going to be selling so many cars, so many iPads, so many shirts, so many tubs of butter and so on. We can work out a rough figure. With football, you can't do that because of the volatility of promotion, relegation, qualification for European competition and so on. So that doesn't tend to work. There is something called the Markham multivariate model designed by Dr. Tom Markham. Tom was a former student here at the University of Liverpool. It's a fun model. It's what I call a quick and dirty model. I think its time has come and gone. The numbers don't quite work out anymore, but it was always a good fun one to use. And those are sort of what you might call traditional city valuation methods. But we then move to the issue that I think Eamon was coming up with. Are these being overvalued by investors or owners? Yes, they are. I mean, because the prices they're paying, and you look at it, you wouldn't do that for any other industry. And the reason for this is down to the fact that we've got a scarcity asset. There are only 20 Premier League football clubs in existence on the planet at any one point in time. Of those, I think it's fair to say 6, possibly 7 or 8 now are going to be there in perpetuity. So you're trying to get hold of something which nobody else has got, and therefore you're prepared to pay more than the asset is worth. And you do that because you want it as a trophy asset. And I evidence this by Robbie Williams paying £20,000 over the course of the past few days for Eric Morecambe's pipe and glasses.
Yeah.
Now, intrinsically, the estimated price that the auctioneer is expected to get was somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000. But to be able to say that you are the owner of Eric Morecambe's pipe it brings bragging rights, and I absolutely understand. So that's what we see in the world of football. Chelsea's not worth £2.5 billion as a business because it's a business which lost £900,000 a week for 19 years. The price paid by Jim Ratcliffe, effectively valuing Manchester United at around about £5 billion, difficult to justify when they pointed out a few months later, we've lost £300 million over the last 3 years. So you're doing it because of the kudos of being able to say, I own Chelsea, I own Manchester United, I own Eric Morecambe's pipe.
Apparently, the Robbie Williams film, where he's played by a chimpanzee, is very, very good. Ed told me it's very, very good. If in the sequel that chimpanzee is smoking Eric Walken's pipe and wearing his hat, I would absolutely buy tickets for that film. Absolutely. Also, only an accountant can say, well, it was a fun model while it lasted. It was a quick and dirty model while it lasted, and May gets out to it. And I'll tell you where Palace and Brighton will be in 20 years' time, Kieran. I can predict with some certainty, despite what Paul Barber and Claire Sumner of the Premier League tell us, we'll be playing in an American-owned Premier League in Saudi Arabia. That's where we'll be in 20 years' time. Unless,
it's better than calling it the A23 derby, isn't it?
That's true. A23 doesn't go all the way. It just makes no sense. Our next question comes from Nathan Cheller. And thank you, Nathan, for putting how to pronounce your name in brackets, because I wouldn't have guessed it from the way it's spelled, to be perfectly honest. But Nathan Cheller I find this really interesting. And both our next two questions are related, actually. But Nathan says, what are the financial benefits of offering stadium tours? Are they more of a vanity project, or are they of genuine benefit to the club? And my backup question to that is, why on earth are Crystal Palace offering tours of Selhurst Park? They must be the shortest tours. Go on, this is a shit burger bar. This is our trophy cabinet. Let's move on. You don't really want to see that. There's not a lot to see there. This is where Steve Parish sits. This is where Kevin Day sits. See over there behind that pillar? That's where Kevin Day sits. And that's it. That's the stadium tour, basically. But it's a good question, Kieran, because, I mean, certainly bigger clubs, we know that Real Madrid and Barcelona, for example, charge a lot of money for stadium tours and have thousands of people a day taking up on them.
Yes, I think it is a question of scale. It is a question of the demographic of individual fan bases as well. So I think for both of our clubs, the number of people who are likely to attend such an event are not going to be moving the dial in any way, shape or form. But if you take, for example, Spurs have their stadium tour, which I think costs £35. And I'm not saying this in any way being disparaging. It's a gateway drug product, because you do your stadium tour, and that leads you through to the megastore, and you're doing your stadium tour, and they say, oh, up there, that's the Skywalk. Do you fancy doing that? That's another 40 quid. Oh, whilst you're here, have you seen the go-karting underneath the stadium? It's absolutely amazing. That's another 60 or 70 quid. And in an environment where clubs are looking to generate revenues on non-match days as much as possible, you can absolutely see the merits. Also, I think from a goodwill point of view, even if Palace and Brighton aren't making money, let's say that you've got a family who have come to London or down in Brighton, they're looking for something to do, so they go on to TripAdvisor or one of those things, and you sign up for it. It could be the start of a longer-term relationship between, we went really like, that's going to be, especially if it's a choice, that's going to be our English club from now. They treated us so well. And I've not been on one myself, but I'm quite keen to go on one or two, because the people that do these tours are absolutely brilliant, because they are people that love the club, and they will tell you, and they'll sidle up to you and whisper, and this is where such happened. You go, oh, that's it, and so on. So I think they are not necessarily financially beneficial for anything other than the elite clubs, but there is a good case for you can get a return on your investment on a long-term basis for one of the smaller clubs.
Exciting and new. Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever. It's alive.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. There's nothing better than the perfect jean and going out top combo, or an outfit that perfectly matches your plans. Abercrombie's relaxed jean goes with every occasion. Date nights with something lace, or daytime with a cozy sweater. And their barrel jean will surprise you. It's the trend that will become a staple in your wardrobe. Abercrombie denim comes in tons of rises, fits, and washes. Find your perfect pair online or in store.
If you go on a Tottenham tour this week, you might be lucky enough to see the plank that Ange Postecoglou is going to be made to walk. Surely, a matter of time. There is part of me. There is part of me that wants to do the Palace tour, but I also know the chaps that do it, and like you say, they are obsessed with. For the last thing they want is me going, "That's not right. That was 1927. That's what you're talking about."
Yes.
Also, let's be fair. That's part. The main reason people want to do the stadium tour is so their kids can have a photograph in the changing room. Essentially, they want to see the dressing room. And they just want to know. The first question they all ask is, "Where does Eze sit?" Really, no one wants to know where Will Hughes' peg is. They just want to have their photograph taken with where Eze. So, on a similar note, Kieran, this next question comes from Paul Hugh Baldwin. And Paul Hugh Baldwin says that I'm a tour guide in London. Now, my retirement plan, such as it is, Kieran, doesn't involve. You'll be surprised to hear there's no real pension plan for here. But I'm going to take it as it comes, see what happens further down the line. But I would love in my retirement to be a blue badge guide in London. So I envy what Paul does. Paul says I'm a tour guide in London who takes mostly international tourists around museums. When I talk to them, and this plays into what you say, Kieran, when I talk to them, quite a high percentage of them are either going to a football match or have just been to one. And some of these people are already football fans, others are clearly not. They mostly go to Tottenham and Arsenal games, as they're obviously local to where they're staying. Some, however, go to Manchester or Liverpool for matches and or other experiences related to the club. And a couple have also attended Football League matches local to London. After hearing your conversations about clubs getting rid of season tickets in order to have more one-off match tickets, and I pause here to say that Paul Barber wasn't very happy with me when I raised that in the interview we did with him that you can hear either Wednesday or Friday. He gave short shrift to that question. That's what clubs were doing. It got me thinking, do clubs in London and the big clubs in the Northwest think more about this type of fan than clubs in other parts of the country? Also, is there a way to measure how many international fans go to individual matches and which clubs attract the most? I suppose do you count Irish fans in this, Kieran? Because obviously in the Northwest, Liverpool, Manchester United, huge numbers of Irish fans. Tottenham, quite clearly, huge numbers of South Korean fans for obvious reasons. But logically, you would think it's Liverpool, Manchester and London that the tourists are going to, Kieran, because there are other reasons for the tourists to be in those cities anyway.
You're absolutely right. As far as your question is concerned, Paul, it's not possible how to measure how many international fans. That data, that degree of granularity, the clubs will potentially know, because you effectively have to give your name to a ticket, which goes through the club, unless you're getting it from Todd Bowley, in which case, you paid your £19,000 to Todd Bowley's company back in the States, you probably get a bit of anonymity thrown in. But that's a separate question. So looking at this, I think you're absolutely right, Paul, that it's linked to clubs which have a proximity to airports, clubs which have a proximity to the large cities, which have other attractions as well. This is not a criticism. How many people are going to rock up in Bournemouth or Wolverhampton specifically as tourists, unless you've got some form of historic affinity with those clubs? So, in terms of my view, the reason why grounds capacities are increasing but season tickets are not going up in the same rate is because it's economics 101. If you are one of those clubs, then the sensible thing to do is to sell the tickets to the people with the deepest pockets. If Palace's capacity goes up to 35,000 with the new stand, I would expect Palace to be trying to sell as many tickets to locals as they can, because that's where your main demographic is going to be. It's the same for Brighton. So it does vary very much from club to club. But London, Manchester, Liverpool are the big drivers. One thing I do look at, and fortunately I don't have to deal with this to the same extent as before, is that I have become an expert in recent years on, could be an idea for the podcast, the price of hotels.
Yeah.
And if Liverpool are playing at home, if Manchester United are playing at home, I cannot get, or rather, I choose not to stay in Liverpool on a night when matches are taking place at Anfield. I'd love to be in the city. I'd love to go into the pubs and so on. Simply even the price of the worst hotels in Liverpool, and by that I mean the Adelphi, and I can say that with my hand on my heart. And if they want to sue me, I say bring it on. I've still got the bites. Even the smaller chains hotels, you see the prices going up by 100% easily.
If you've still got the bites, Kieran, I suggest you keep the Baroness off the cocktails. Would be the way of it. I don't know how the Adelphi does. I've been in Wetherspoons with less sticky carpets than the Adelphi Hotel, and that's saying something, isn't it? Yes. So they have to sue us both. No, I think technically, legally, they have to sue Producer Guy, don't they? I think we've sorted that out between us, Kieran, don't we? That he's legally responsible for everything we say. He's our responsible adult. Jake Nelson has our next question. Jake says, how do transfer deal add-ons count towards a club's FFP calculations? I know if a club signs a player for 50 million over 5 years, then it's amortised at £10 million per year. But say in year 2 and 3, a clause is triggered, which means another 2 lots of 5 million are payable. How are they factored into a club's FFP calculations? Is it just an extra £5 million cost in those 2 years?
There is an element of it depends here, Jake. There's a case for saying that if you sign a player for 10 million, and if that player plays 20 games in the first season, then you've got to pay another 5. Could you therefore amortise that extra £5 million over 4 years remaining in the contract? We would have to wait and see until the exact small print of the contract was examined. Equally, there is a case for saying that is a triggering contractual event, and therefore it becomes payable immediately, and as such, it's nothing to do with the transfer of the registration. So I can't give a definitive answer. It would vary on a contract-by-contract basis.
Okay. Our penultimate question, Kieran, because for time reasons we're having to keep this one a little shorter than normal, but our penultimate question comes from David Peacock. And David says, regarding your favourite revenue per supporter per match spreadsheet, David, it's like Sophie's Choice. Kieran doesn't have a favourite spreadsheet. He would be devastated to think that he had to choose one of his spreadsheets. Do you have a cost per supporter equivalent? In other words, do you know what the match day operational cost per supporter per game is for different clubs?
I'm really sorry, David, but again, that level of granularity in terms of matchday costs is not given. To be fair to some clubs, they do give an indication as to the number of part-time staff that they have. So you can work out a couple of figures, but it's not possible. As far as the revenue per supporter, again, it's very much geared towards the big 6 clubs, and you're averaging for some of them over £90 per fan per match. And if fans are saying, well, I don't pay that, remember, it is an average, and therefore the money which is being paid for those clubs, especially those that have relatively new stadia with a significant proportion of hospitality boxes and corporate clients, they tend to be the reason why those figures are so high.
So it's not as simple then, Kieran, as to say a club has a capacity of 45,000 and it makes a matchday revenue of £1 million. It's not as simple as dividing one figure by the other.
No, because you're not given the matchday costs total. It just comes in. There's just one overall heading of overheads. Now that will include the cost of running the the training facilities, the cost of running the physio, the electricity cost, the IT costs, the accounting costs, and so on.
I think it was. I don't mean this in a trying to remind you of a terrible 7-0 result, Kieran, but I think it was at the City Ground last week where they're using shipping containers as extra corporate boxes, which I thought was rather clever.
Yes.
It's not the main reason to watch that game for the end, Kieran, I have to say, just to get another glimpse of those. But yeah, our last question, Kieran, comes from Tony Hereford. Now, I'm really hoping, Kieran, that Tony Hereford is his name, and it's not Tony from Hereford. He's a Preston fan, so I'm hoping that Tony Hereford is his name, because Tony Hereford, without a doubt, has gone straight into my top 3 favourite names of anybody who's ever sent a question. Tony Hereford, I could just imagine Tony Hereford singing in a bar in Rochdale in 1975. Tony Hereford's got a big hairy chest and a lot of gold, hasn't he? Can't quite reach the high notes, but in his head he's Matt Monro. But it's what a great name, Tony Hereford. Tony Hereford says, for the last couple of seasons, my club, Preston North End, have reduced the price of early bird season tickets. One example is the general ground season ticket, which is usually £400, but is available to early buyers for £280. As a result, attendances have increased by 2,000 to 3,000. My question is, have the club gained or lost revenue during this venture? I mean, a couple of things, Kieran. I suppose it's actually impossible to say whether that increase of 2,000 to 3,000 is solely down to the decrease in season tickets. But also, this is something 10 or 12 years ago, almost out of the blue, a lot of clubs decided they were going to do early bird season tickets, and a lot of clubs since have decided to stop doing it.
Yes. What we need to know here is the price elasticity of demand,
of course,
in respect of football fans and their determination to renew. But to make the things look as crudely as I can, I went on initial assumption, let's say that there are 10,000 season tickets being sold at Preston North End. In order to break even with the lower price, you'd have to increase that to 14,200. So it is a big challenge as far as a club is concerned. That is a very generous discount, and also £280 for 23 home games. That is fantastic value. So fair play to the Hemmings family, because they're subsidising Preston North End to the tune of £1 million a month. That's the numbers. It's something which historically has never been very successful, because what you have to do is that you have to go so deep as far as the discount is concerned. You end up in a situation as we have here, where you have to sell 40% more tickets in order to just break even. And even if you sell an extra 5,000 tickets, the actual overall impact on revenue is actually quite low.
I suppose, though, Kieran, even to a bear of small economic brain like me, it helps short-term cash flow. But
yes.
in the long term, it doesn't strike me as a particularly good idea, does it?
It's the same as any form of an early bird scheme. Short-term gain, potentially medium, long-term pain. What happens if you only sell an extra 2,000 tickets? Your quid's in, and then whilst you've got the money in March and April, when it comes to paying the wage bill in September and October, and you've got one home fixture and you've only got 2,000 people turning up on, you might have 2 home fixtures for that month. You do your sums, and it looks quite horrendous.
Yeah. Also, on the subject, what we did see as well for a time was clubs offering 3-year, 5-year. I think in Sheffield Wednesday's case, even 10-year season tickets, and that I can't find any clubs who are doing that at the moment either.
The economics simply don't make sense. The take-up tends to be very low. If you take a look at the incentivisation that they had at Sheffield Wednesday for the 10-year tickets, which was very generous, because your 10-year clock only started running down when Sheffield Wednesday reached the Premier League. So,
wow.
in theory, if they never reach the Premier League, you never have to go and renew. I'd heard from a source, and I cannot confirm this, that they only sold 4 of those tickets, 3 of whom were to people with the surname Chansiri.
Wow, okay. Don't forget you can now join our Price of Football Club, where you'll get ad-free listening, bonus episodes and more. Just go to priceoffootball.com and click on Join the Club to sign up today. One important thing to be aware of is if you are one of our wonderful Patreon subscribers, your membership will not transfer over automatically if you sign up to the new club. You'll need to cancel your Patreon subscription and set up a new one using the link on the website. We will turn off our Patreon offering at the end of this month. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, X, and find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy our book, you can go to a bookshop where you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. If you are a Price of Football Club member, then we'll be back on Wednesday, where that interview with Paul Barber, CEO of Brighton, and Claire Sumner from the Premier League will be available. If you're not a Price of Football Club member, you can get that interview on Friday. And if our next pod for you will be our news pod on Thursday, which is already, looking at the email Guy sent this morning, going to be one of the longer. It's going to make up for this being a short pod by that being an extra long pod. There's some really good news stories in there. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
I'll keep this brief because I know that Kevin's got that I need to get to Doncaster look in his eye.
Yeah.
If you want to support the show, please do so in a variety of means. If you can't do it financially, and I absolutely understand why not just give us a review? It genuinely helps in terms of the algorithms. And you could even say you would rather see it presented by Eric Morecambe and Robbie Williams.
No disrespect to Kieran Maguire and Kevin Day, Kieran, but I'd rather see it presented by Eric Morecambe and Robbie Williams.
Yes.
I don't often get to say this, Kieran, but luckily my lift to Doncaster has fallen through, and I'm not going to book a hotel at this late stage in the proceedings. So I was going to say, if anyone wants a free ticket for the Doncaster game tonight, please let me know. But as this is going out the morning after the Doncaster game, fingers crossed for you. I'll tell you where I'm going, Kieran. I'm going to the sofa. Somebody with a cold dispatch should have been asked to do a podcast in the first place. Let's face it, Kieran.
Criminal, Kevin. It's only because you're a pro that we managed to get through.
Yeah, just. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. Price of Football.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Gladiator 2 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Rated R. Years after the death of Maximus, Lucius is forced into the Colosseum after his home is conquered by tyrannical twin Roman emperors. With the future of the empire at stake, he must find strength and honor to return the glory of Rome to its people. Gladiator 2. Now streaming on ParamountPlus.com.